Good morning. This is Mike Tabor. We're here on a beautiful day here at Keystroke Live, and we're going to go over batch files today on Wednesday the 28th. Thank you for attending. Today we're just going to go over some basics on batch files, when to use them, when not to use them, and how they can affect your setups. A couple of things. We'll just first talk about this as our regular about Keystroke Live, and we'll do it every Wednesday at 10 o'clock. And next week, by the way, I'll present this later, we're going to go over our drawing for $2015 for the people for thank you on our dealers that have bought Keystroke Point of Sale. Today we're going to talk about batch files, and the main purpose here is to talk about how we can really automate tasks, make things easier for Keystroke, and things like multi-store polling, report queues, and making backups. We've found out over time that there's some pros and cons about using them for command line switches. The benefits are that we can have all of these batch files for different registers and so forth, and we can back them up, and it's kind of like backing up a shortcut, which you can also do. Sometimes the cons are the process of if you move from server A to server B and you don't change your batch files, then they all stop working and then you have some problems. We'll also talk about the Microsoft commands like the start command that will do a wait process before the next 32-bit application runs. So in case of a multi-store polling, you don't want everything to run at the same time in multiple windows. You really do want it to be sequential. I have some examples today. One is about the backup that Keystroke makes. We actually make a batch file and then run it. We're going to go through that. A simple little batch file that we've created called StartKP. It's actually used for stopping and starting the KeyPay service. We also have one called StartKM for the Keymail service. We shouldn't really have to use these on a regular basis, but it's much easier to have them available for people that you don't want to walk through on the telephone to open up services, find the KeyPay service, and then stop and restart it. regdlls.bat's been around with Keystroke for a long time. When you move things from server A to server B, and or you change drive mappings, let's say you've been running from k:// now it's k:/apps/keystroke, you may have to re-register our DLL programs. And then mergenet.bat is a more complex nightly polling process. We'll show you how a lot of things happen in a batch file and how that can help you out in the future. So let's first talk about the KSBACK.bat file. I'm going to go to Keystroke here. And I think I got, two of them open. I'm going to close one. All right, just want to make sure I'm in the right place. Okay, so this is just our Keystroke data. I'm actually using a copy of Tutor data with a few minor changes. If we go into Configuration Manager, and then we go to, that was from either the exit menu or the navigation menu to Configuration Manager. We have our standard backup. Well, let's just show you how this would work. Here's a standard backup in Keystroke. And today I'm running from the live directory. It's what I do to keep things straight. And I'm going to make a file. First of all, I'm going to back up star.dat files. I'm going to do it from the live subfolder. I could put in a full path. And I'm going to create a file called, it's a subfolder called backups. That's keyback.zip. I'm going to say OK here. And the point here is that Keystroke actually creates a batch file and then runs the batch file. So I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to bounce around a little bit here and So what I'm doing here is I'm just going to open up Notepad and look at a file that Keystroke just made during that backup called KSBACK. It's a batch file. If I hit enter on this, I'm just going to use Notepad to open it up. I'll go ahead and share this screen here. And this is actually the command that it ran. This is running this 7-zip application. It's actually a .exe. It's telling you to do an archive. It's telling you to make it a zip extension or a type of zip. And it tells about the name of the file, the resulting file, what I'm going to back up. The R means recursive directories. This right here is talking about exclude some of these user temp files, some KP temp files, and so forth. And this is what Keystroke does. This makes a quick and easy little batch file which you can copy over. And I did that. So I'm going to show you. Make sure I'm sharing the right screen. This is one I took the same exact information and I added something to it. So I took that backup and created a file called backup.bat, and it actually goes in, and this actually is running from the KS7 folder, by the way, in Keystroke. That's why you see that, KS7. And it runs the same 7-zip application, makes the same file. In this case, it's going to be called backups keyback.zip. And here's a case here. I've added in some lines. I've used our datename.exe program. And for a guy that writes batch files, I like to put in that I know it's a .exe. Like up here, this could be a .exe. You know, don't confuse yourself by not putting in those extensions. This is actually going to run the same exact backup I just did. It's going to take the file called keyback.zip and give it a new name, and it's going to actually put the date on it. So let's go ahead and save this and run this batch file. And as an example, I'm just going to be back here in DOS to run this batch file. It's just called backup. I'm going to put in the .bat for clarity. And it should go ahead and run this, and then the last step it did is it renamed the backup to today's date, the 150128.zip. Let's take a look at this, and I'll just open up Explorer here. So here I'm on my C drive. I'm going to open up the KS7 folder. I have a backups folder. And now I've taken the file that I just created, and it's called 15. Sorry about the flickering of my mouse. Not sure why that's happening. But we got the zip file here, and let's open this zip file up just to view what's in it. Since I've done all DAT files, I did not do INI files. I did not do any other files that you might think pertinent, like batch files or anything like that. So you'll see my database screens file. There's all the DAT files there. Some list files. My summary DAT files. Toolbars have a few of them in there. And these are all my DAT files. So I've just created a backup. I can continue to run this, and I'm going to do so. And notice how just by adding our date name option, where I renamed it, it's going to create another file. So let's run backup.bat again. And now it's created a new file with a -a extension. Let's go take a look at that. So now I have two backups, and they've been distinguished by the A, and it would go to A, to B, to C, to D, to AA, A, Z, and so forth. And the idea here is that you can do multiple backups throughout the day and not overwrite an original backup. If you continually create the keyback.zip file and you overwrite it every day, the common thing that happens is we have a problem. First thing I want to do is make a backup, and you overwrite the good stuff with the bad stuff, and then you find out I've I've lost my bad stuff. I lost my good stuff. So keep in mind a little simple addition to a batch file like this can actually help you quite a bit. So let's go take a look again. This part right here is actually what was added to the KSBACK.bat file that Keystroke creates, and I just use our little program called datename, and that's the syntax that you should use, and you can use this in the future. We also have KSBACkup.exe that uses a similar process. It does the datenaming process, and there's a sample of what a batch file would look like in the document file. So we talked about backing things up and then running a multiple backup process. Let's talk about some other things too. The startkp.bat file. Let's go ahead and take a look at that, and let me open it up here. And we'll display this on the screen. So this is our startkp.bat file. Important things here. It uses a net stop command. The first command it uses is actually to stop the keystroke payment module process. We have a similar batch file for KeyPay. And then it goes through and then it restarts the keystroke payment module. If there's an error in this batch file, it says, well, if the error level is equal to 1, which means it's not equal to 0. If it's equal to 4, it actually means it's equal to 1 also. And then it would go and it would jump on down to this bad area here, and it would just echo this across the screen saying it could not start. Call us and we'll take care of it. If it doesn't do that, this little notion here says go to the good area, and this is where the good area starts and says everything's fine. Well, let's go ahead and run that and see how it looks. I'm just going to clear the screen. I'm going to run the start KP batch file. And this is using some echo off commands, so you don't actually see the commands until you see things happening. And here it's stopping the service. It says it was stopped. It's starting the service, and it says it was started, and then everything's okay. If I went into services like right now, and I can do that, I'm going to do that behind the scenes here. So if I'm in the services and I find, let's say, for instance, the keystroke payment module is not even running. Let's say I set it to disabled. First of all, I got to stop it. It's disabled. Now it's going to be very hard to start. So if you were to run the same batch file, I'll jump back into DOS, run this batch file. It's a start kp.bat. And here we have some errors that are coming up. It says the system error has occurred. The service cannot be started because it's disabled or it has been enabled. And that just tells us that little note. So if we think about what that batch file is actually doing for us, you can see here that it went through this process. There was an error level. The error level was reported by the operating system, and it says go to this bad message, and you can put your own phone number in here or whatever and tell people to give you a call. We'll figure it out. People that use, let's say, KeyPay with PC Charge would not be using the service, so this batch file would give you this error message. It wouldn't even be in there. Before I forget, I'm going to go back and just re-enable this, otherwise I'll leave somebody else a nightmare to figure out. I'm going to put it on manual. Normally it's automatic. Let's do automatic here. And then I can, now that I've set it back up in the services, let's just run that batch file one last time. And we'll run it again here. And we're going to run it, and it's going to try to stop it. And notice that it says that it could not stop it because it's not started, and then it went ahead and started and everything's fine. So that's an example of how the KP batch file is written. That kind of gives you some options. A lot of times we look around for reasons to either create a file if there's a problem that exists. There you can actually use other commands like a send mail command to send yourself an email in case there's a problem and something can't start or something doesn't run the night before and so forth. I put in regDLLs here, but I do want to talk more about reports, and then we're going to go into that. But let's take a quick look at the regDLLs.batch file. And we have created this file for many years, and we've come up with bigger and better ways to take care of all this stuff. But this basically says if you're not on a Windows XP Service Pack 3, run these commands here. Otherwise, run the ones below. And what it's doing here is it's actually, except for the rem lines, it's going through this process of registering the AR.dll, the closeout.dll, all the DLL files, and it is registering them from the place that you ran this batch file. You cannot put this batch file on the desktop because those DLLs don't reside on the desktop. The /s in this case is a suppression message that says if there's a problem running any one of these DLLs, suppress the error, I don't want to hear it. You can easily take our regDLLs and do a search and replace and take out all these /s's, and then you'll see every registry succeeded, and so forth. That's something there. We also have a program that replaces this called regks.exe, and it's used because of Windows 8 requires that we elevate the privileges to register these files. Not in my notes here, but I do want to bring it up again that we can run report queues and other things like this. So I'm going to go ahead and open Keystroke. Let me get into where you can see it. And let's say I go to Report Manager. And let's say I've got a report group. And here I've got one called Sales Reports, and it prints two simple reports. It's a sales invoice summary and an inventory sales analysis. So I can just run it in Keystroke, but let's say it takes an hour to run each of these reports because I always like to do it for a one-year basis. Again, this is tutor data. This will be very quick. But if I decide to go 1 year ago today, that's a way to say go back 1 year. If I hit tab, you'll see, if I get my cursor in the right place, it goes back 1 year from today. If I said like -1D, that'll be up to 1 day ago. So that's actually a 365-day report, depending on leap year. And we'll just go ahead and run this through the program and show you what it does. Things are happening in the background. You may not see all of these, but let's take a look at them. First of all, we have an inventory sales analysis report. I think I'm showing you that one. Let me close some things down here first of all. So here's an inventory sales analysis report from the 1 year in the past, and I did this with inside of Keystroke. And here's my report for every item that was sold in the last year, how many were sold, and then at the end it tells me a total cost, a total revenue, and a total profit, and it shows me my percentages. I'm going to close this one. You should now be seeing, I hope, the sales transaction report. This one here, I hope you see that, is again going back 1 year. This is very simple data. That's why there's only 30 transactions. But it shows you a year of information. Well, we can create a batch file to take care of this for us. So let me go out to DOS here and sorry, okay, let me change my focus here. And here's a simple batch file. This was actually going to go to, again, my KS7 folder. It is going to run this wait command. This is important, that the start /W is the wait command for any 32-bit application. Doesn't matter in this batch file. This does not matter because I'm only running one exe. It's going to run and it's done. But things like we'll see in the mergenet.bat are very more complex, and then you can't have extract running while store merge is trying to store merge in commands that have not been completed yet. So this wait command really should be used for all the exes. Do it out of diligence and you'll solve a lot of problems. So this is going to run ksr.exe, and there's other ways to do that. It's going to go to the live directory. It's going to use the QID equals 1. It's going to go back 1 year, and it's going to end 1 day ago, so I should get the same results as I just did earlier. So let's go ahead and run that. Now from the DOS prompt here, I'm just going to run my batch file called report. And as I just hit enter here, it's going to shell out, run keystroke, fire off some reports, and let me show you what I see. Again, we have the sales analysis report, and here, if you're seeing it, hopefully it seems to be flickering back and forth for me, but I see the inventory sales analysis report. Again, I use the same dates, 1 year ago from today and up to yesterday, so it's all inclusive of the full year. And you can get tricky about this to say start on the first of the month, end at the end of the month, things like that. Things like end equals .99 would say use the end of the month. And the same report just printed there. I'm going to show you the other one that also printed. I think you might see it now. If I can find it. Yep, there you go. And so this one here is the same report. It goes back to the 28th through the 27th. So that's a very simple batch file. And we're able to, excuse me, I'm going to close a few things. So we've done kind of the easy stuff. We can do report queues. What you can do with that report queue, though, is you can set up 1 or 2 or 3 different queues, run them at the first day of the month, and say, go look back last month. And if people are tired about waiting for a 40-minute report to run, you can actually have it set up and run it every morning at 4 in the morning, send it to the printer, and they come in the morning before their copy's ready. All the reports are on the printer ready to go. They don't have to sit around and wait for things to happen. So if people know what they want to do, batch file is a great way to take care of that. Part of our explanation now in this batch file, before I get into like a complex batch file, is number 1 or number 2 is using them for command line switches. If I were to look at my keystroke right here, and it shows me, sorry, I'm going to back it up a step. This shows me how keystroke is being run. It shows my data switch being live. If I put a lot of command line switches into a batch file and you call us for support, some people might have a problem figuring out what you're trying to accomplish, and they're going to go, well, we got to go look at those batch files. Then we got to see what ini files are being used, and it becomes very cumbersome to figure out how batch files are used. We've actually spent many man hours trying to find typos in batch files when all we needed to do was look at the shortcut and see all the command line switches in there. We don't really need to have a batch file to run Keystroke. There was a day back in the DOS days where you couldn't put more than 128 characters in a command line or a startup switch, and that would be a problem. But now that's not a limitation, so we shouldn't have to worry about that. Well then, lastly, and I'll finish up here, we have, I mentioned the pros and cons here. Lastly, I mentioned the mergenet.bat. Some people are moving to Multistore and they have multiple locations, and RDP is a great solution for them, meaning they can actually have one main server, like a 2008 server, 2012 server, holding all the data, and use RDP to remote in every day. And here's going to be an example, as I open it up, of our mergenet.bat, which we do ship with the Keystroke program. Gotta type it right. Let me show you this. Now, this is a complex batch file here. This one here kind of starts out with a lot of rem statements. Rem statements are remarks, and so they're not actually executed. It goes through this process of backing up last night's or the day before's batch files, deletes some unnecessary new files, and then it starts running different things. Like here's a case where it's running the store update command. Again, it's using the start/w. It's going to run this, and it's going to wait till that's done before it moves on. If it moves on too quickly, running the extract or the stir merge might not find the stock numbers that were just added this day. So here's another command down here. This is going to extract from the store 1, and by the way, this merge file takes store 1 data, store 2 data, and puts it into a consolidated database. And so we have here two different things. This is going to extract from store 1, extract from store 2. There's this little checks and balances right here. This whole process right here makes sure that if the extract were to hang up and not finish, it would create a 0-byte file, and this checks for that. These steps right here merge the data into a consolidated database. This is where the steps will actually copy customers from the consolidated database back to each store's subdirectory. And these are kind of like these other files that may or may not be used. Like, let's say you want to have a consolidated clerk database, or departments, or alternate codes, and so forth. And that's what this is talking about here. And then just here down below is a little process that says, if I had a problem, I will have some what we call ERR files or error files, and it'll just actually put those into your Keystroke directory. And if you look for those files, or you can send an email if there's a problem with a file, you know your polling didn't work. So kind of this is a great example of a complex batch file. We have even more complex batch files for merging with FTP instead of using real-time RDP. So those are always available. If you have any questions, we can help you out with that. So I think I have kind of really rushed through a whole bunch of batch files. We're here for information. If you want to call us and say, I've got some great questions for that, that's great. I'm going to open up, before I do that, I want to remind you all that as you buy anything, software or software maintenance, you're eligible for a drawing this month. We've extended it to February 3rd. So next week on the 4th, there will be a live drawing for $2,015. So I'm going to open up, I'm going to unmute everyone. If there's any questions, feel free to ask right now. And I think I've rushed through batch files, but it took about 30 minutes. Does anyone have a question for me? Well, that's easy then. Well, thank you very much for attending, and We'll have these available on our YouTube site. And if you have any questions, just give us a call here at the office, and we'll go through batch files with you. Thank you. Have a good day.